Hello, everyone, and welcome to the latest weekly edition of my Changing Lives uh, live broadcast slash podcast. Um, I am thrilled today to have as my guest Nathalie Latham, who has graciously stayed up past midnight to be here. She lives in India, and so there's quite a time difference between us. Um, but I'll briefly introduce myself and then let Nathalie introduce herself. But my Substack is Changing Lives, and it's just my name, Wendy with an I, wendygordon.substack.com is the main site. And I started in 2022. It's about mental and spiritual health. And I also do private coaching, and I do online and in person um, support groups and presentations and workshops where I share my own story of recovering from depression and leaving my former career as a pastor as my spiritual beliefs broadened and I wanted to connect with more people of diverse faith traditions and draw on their wisdom. So that's a little bit about me. And now I will invite Nathalie to share a little bit about herself and her work.
Thank you, Wendy. Thank you so much for having me on your Substack. This is my very first Substack interview or live. So thank you. So my Substack is I Am Alive, which is the name of my book, which I think, and my Substack is around the work of my book, which is a visual memoir of surviving cancer, but also surviving depression and very severe PTSD. And so I've only just joined this year on Substack, so I'm fairly new to it, and I'm putting out work around the themes of that come out of my drawings in my book. So,
Wonderful.
and
And I was able to read your book before our live, which was wonderful. And I just have the digital edition, so it doesn't do justice to your beautiful art, of course. But nevertheless, I could see it and just read your story. Um, so tell us a little bit about as you share in the book your journey of the treatment that you had to go through and just surviving that, and then going through the not even wanting to live because it took so long to recover, and what brought you out of that to thriving again.
well, you've asked many questions in one.
Yes.
So, well, I can start at the beginning. So it was in 2009. I was diagnosed with stage 3 cervical cancer, and actually, do you know what? I'll read the very first page because that describes the experience so beautifully, and I'm sure that other people have had those moments where everything in your life changes and life will never be the same. The doctor clicks her pen, looks down at the worn carpet where her feet follow the swivel of the chair. She doesn't look me in the eye. You have stage 3 cervical cancer. Then she tells me in a matter-of-fact manner, we do not know if the cancer has spread to your lymph nodes. If it has, the survival rate is low. I can no longer feel the chair beneath me. What else is she saying? A roaring silence fills me. I am free falling through the sky. No parachute. Nothing to hold on to. Is this it? I am 39 years old. So that was the experience of being diagnosed with stage 3 cervical cancer. And at the time, the doctors were not at all positive about my outcome of being able to survive it. And I went through treatment, so radiation treatment, which is brachytherapy for cervical cancer. So it's internal radiation, 7 days and 7 nights of radiation every hour. And I came out of that. I went into that going in as having a very profoundly spiritual experience because I knew it was such a terrible and horrifying thing to go through that the night before I went into it, I was in the radiation room and I sat in prayer and I just spoke to my soul and I just said to myself, or to my soul, this is the worst thing that can happen to me as a human being. But what I will do is I will go through this process as a spiritual being. and I will see everything as one. So the radiation machine is one. I am one with my with the walls around, and I basically saw everything as the divine. So the walls being the divine, the window. There was a small window with a tree outside. It's like that is the divine, and I'm one with the tree. I'm The tumor is divine. I'm one with the tumor. Anyone who walks through that door will also be the divine, and it will be an experience of oneness. So I went into that because I just thought there was no other way that I could face with the idea of being burnt alive internally for 7 days and 7 nights. So that was the process that I went through, and then I started to draw. Once I was in radiation, I was stuck on my back. I don't know if you know the images of Frida Kahlo when she's
Yes.
in bed drawing. And that was an image that really stuck with me, of someone being stuck in bed and not being able to move at all, which was the situation that I was in. Um, I was fortunate to have the imagination and to actually go to an art stall before I went into radiation. So I actually came into radiation with a bag full of art supplies. So I had clay and Fimo, and I bought these oil pastels and a whole other bunch of things. And up until that moment, I was a photographer. So I was traveling the world, and really my life was, looking out to the other and witnessing other stories. And all of a sudden I was stuck in bed, and I photographed a few things, but I couldn't, you can only do so much photography
Right.
from bed. So camera was useless, and I ended up in radiation, being in the experience of experiencing such profound horror. Well, don't know if yeah, it was. I don't know if the horror was profound, but it was actually it was horror, and it was and I and it was a very complex feeling because I was also trapped. I couldn't move, and I had to be calm, and there was all, so it was a very complex experience to be going through, and I was also in a lot of physical pain. So I had this idea that I would be reading and journaling and um looking at movies and that sort of stuff, and all of a sudden I'm faced with this horrific experience, and the only thing that I can do is to draw. And so I had these small these small art pads which I had, and I would just draw lying on my back. And this process was what really helped me just have my mind focus on something, because when you're going through something very, very difficult, it's your mind can wander, and I was quite worried about losing my mind in that experience. So I just kept on focusing on it and focusing on how many hours there were, and going through that. And also I'm in my spiritual practice, I have a mantra, and I chanted that mantra all the time, all the time, all the time. So that was sort of the origin of the actual book. But at the time, I wasn't thinking of writing a book. I was just literally just trying to survive the experience.
Yes, and as we talked about briefly before we went live, I've certainly never had to deal with cancer, and you describe in the book very vividly, the details you're leaving out now of just how horrific your treatment was,
Mm,
and every, getting it every hour, all through 24/7, so you couldn't even sleep, and
mm,
literally the all you could move of your body for a week was your hands and your ankles and your feet, and, I can't begin to imagine, how what that was like for you, but the depression part and the not wanting to even survive part, I can because I've been there, and that
mm,
kind of led to my Substack and my, uh, doing the work that I do, coaching other people who are struggling with mental and spiritual issues and just trying to find hope, um because for more than a year, I did not want to live, and I had reached the stage of actively researching ways to end my life. And thankfully, I did not, and obviously, I recovered now, and I lead support groups and do the coaching and all these things. But yeah, when you're in it, it's not like then I was thinking, oh, I'm going to later be able to inspire others, and I'm going to come out of this happier and better off. And you also mentioned in your book about before the cancer diagnosis and the treatment, you had been so much busy all the time, always striving, involved in so many different activities, and then suddenly there's nothing at all that you can do except for the throwing in bed essentially, and then your long recovery period, which is much longer than you anticipated. But I liked that you mentioned, like, kind of the maybe the one good thing that came out of that was that kind of recognition that the striving part of you was not how you wanted to live, and maybe a deeper spirituality. Maybe you can share more about that.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the greatest gift of going through these y crises in life is it's it's like we never want to go through a crisis, and we never want to go have a disaster happen, like, no nobody wants to have a I went through. There's also that thing in life where you are given that experience or given that moment, and you there's I mean, there's really only one way to and one it's to go through it. And it is I mean, for me, it was an excruciating experience. The radiation was really awful, but actually I thought my mindset it would take me 3 months to recover. It took me 5 years to really come back to who I was, and then another 2 years, like, to come back into life and to actually
Mhm.
be able to function and that sort of stuff, and then another 2 years to actually be who where I am now. Um, and but that process, has given me such a richness of who I am today, and if I hadn't been faced with that crisis, I would have just been continuing wanting to be, very ambitious within my photographic career and not really that interested in, other people suffering. Whereas now now I know that when I see someone suffering, I can just be there quietly, and I know there's nothing to change because it's just people just want to be heard, and they just want to be, just want your presence. Well, that's been my experience.
Yes,
And
mine too. Just to be seen and heard, and not have you immediately try to cheer them up or fix them or promise them that things are going to get better or that ultimately it'll all be for the best. Any of that stuff for myself too, when I was in that deep dark place. I didn't believe a word of it, and it added to my shame that I wasn't feeling grateful and hopeful about, coming out of it and all of that. So yes, it's so true. I think for all of us when we're hurting, that we just need to be listened to and have our feelings validated, not someone try to change them and make us feel better. And then when we do come out of it, as you said, we have this new empathy and understanding of what it's like. And so we want to help other people, not in the sense of fixing them, but of being a safe person who will listen and not try to solve their problems or give them false promises that life will definitely be better. We can just offer suggestions and share our own story and hope that maybe some practices that we use, like your creativity and your art, can be a suggestion that helps someone else try something that makes them feel better, but without going into it of I have the solution to all of your problems.
yeah, exactly. And I think I agree. Is that when I was going through my experience of the recovery, is like it was the most annoying thing to have people suggest things. It's just like because it was like you don't know how difficult this is. Just to get out of bed or just to be having a conversation with another human being. It was so it's yeah. All the things that people did wrong as like definitely I don't yeah it was like a big learning curve for me. So and I do find that just presence and just to be in a loving presence is just so important. And yeah, and I feel that's I can actually do that now, whereas I wouldn't have had the skills of that before my treatment.
Yes,
Like yeah,
I had some of those skills from my former career as a pastor,
of
but
course,
it's
yeah.
still completely different having been the one to experience it versus, being the other person who's just listening. Um, and out of my own experience, I created a depression and anxiety survival kit PDF. And one of the articles in it is how to help someone you love who is depressed. And it starts with a list of things not to do, which are, don't tell them they should be grateful because other people have it worse than they do. Um, don't tell them everything happens for a reason or it's all part of God's plan, or, um, look on the bright side, try to cheer them up, try to force them to get out of bed and go do things. All of that just adds to the shame and makes it worse.
Mm. Yeah, and yeah, that's so true. There's actually a drawing of mine where, because people always ask me what do you need or what, and one of the drawings actually is all I need is a cooked meal and my feet massaged. And it was in that space where that's all I needed at that time. So it's this one here. And I think it's like it's so much simpler in terms of what one needs as in terms of just presence
Yes.
in those difficult moments. But you were talking about creativity. I haven't actually, no, I actually do suggest people to create when they're going through the really difficult times, because I think creativity is also a way of actually really connecting to the soul. Because I think what's important in that process is a connection to the soul and a connection to nature. So nature on the external, and then the soul as an internal. And for me, my drawings are really an experience of connecting to my soul. So when I draw, I'm really feeling what is going on internally in a very, very deep way. And that's something that sort of, I think can help people. I draw, but, can also be through writing or through any form of creativity. But I do think that creativity is so important because it is a way also to, just uh, to understand very, very complex emotions.
Yeah.
And which, so when I was going through the radiation, I couldn't express anything. I couldn't talk about it, but I could draw what I was feeling. And I was just drawing because through colors. Like if I was feeling extremely angry, I would be drawing with a particular color, and I would just keep drawing and drawing until that emotion would just diminish, and then I'd keep drawing it, and then that emotion would actually change into something else, and then the next emotion would be a different color, and I would get on the drawing pad and draw that. And for me, it was a really great way of actually, it was almost like somatic experiencing of actually going through the emotions and placing them somewhere that was outside of me, which can happen also when you write journals and that sort of stuff.
Yes. My experience of it has been through journaling and through writing online. Um, because as you said, it externalizes the emotions. It's a way of releasing them and also of even becoming aware of them for me. Sometimes I'm very surprised by what comes out. I journal first thing every morning, and it's just a complete write whatever is on my heart and mind that comes to me. And sometimes I'm surprised by what comes. And I also do the practice that Elizabeth Gilbert popularized on Substack of letters from love, where you actually write to the divine, what do you want me to know or to do? And I was doing that, before she came here, and I was like, wow, other people do this too. And it's wonderful to be part of that community and read the letters. But it was so healing for me, and there was such a clear difference between what I write and then what I just kind of channel and write as the divine's response. That, some people would say, oh, well, that's just what you want to hear or whatever. And for one thing, okay, even if it is, so what? If it helps me, that's fine. But no, for me, there's this deep inner knowing that this is some wiser, higher being, force, whatever you want to call the divine, that is speaking to me and through me as I write.
That's so beautiful.
Mhm.
And what's been your favorite message, or the message that's moved you the most?
Um, just it's always a message of love and
Mm.
comfort and reassurance that even though I may feel alone, I'm always in the presence of this divine love, and that I'm not truly alone ever, because the divine is both with me and within me and connecting me to all of life. We talked earlier about the healing power of nature, and I mentioned that I walk in the park as often as possible, and I just looking into the eyes of a great blue heron or a rabbit that's just standing still close to me, and I'm just mesmerized and equally still. It's just such a powerful spiritual experience. And even though I'm not a visual artist myself, I spirituality for me also includes going to art museums and galleries and just being in the presence of others' beautiful art of all mediums is just fantastic. In fact, last weekend I went to an art festival in Galveston that had it was an outdoor festival, so I was outside as well as enjoying the art. And there were wood carvers, there were clay pottery makers, stained glass, fused glass, um, every kind of art under the sun, paintings, of course, jewelry, you name it. And it's just so calming and healing for me to either be in nature or to be in the presence of art like that, especially art that depicts nature.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's yeah, I've always loved to see the expression of the human spirit through art and across cultures too. Is
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. And this the connection of nature is something that is also so important. And in India I work with Screen Shakti, which is an environmental program. So that was actually one of the well that was I was given that when I moved to India 6 months after my treatments when I was very, very depressed because my spiritual teacher said, come and recover there, come and recover here, which at the time, looking in retrospect, that's what saved my life because I was living in Paris in my apartment and I really did want to just throw myself under a bus. So I really do know that coming here was a way to save my life. And so I was given after about a year of being here, I was given the tree planting project, which is part of the temple where I'm staying, um, and so that was about going off and watering trees and planting trees and maintaining trees. And I thought, oh, that's it's going to be good to do that as an activity. But what I actually found is that it was beyond. It was actually nature taking care of me.
Mm.
And I found that more I connected with nature because had to go every day to go and water these trees. And at first I thought that's what I'm doing is taking care of the trees. But as I watered them every day, you start seeing the details of nature and you start seeing leaves open and flowers open and the bird coming and sitting on the tree that you planted 2 months ago. And all of that was was nature telling me that I had to move forward. Like at the time, I really didn't want to live, but I had the whole of Mother Nature saying the only way forward is, that is life is only forward. Life doesn't go any other direction except forward with this energy, and that is the energy that really gave me the desire to come back to living and it was still a long a few years, but I really felt that nature supported me and Mother Earth supported me through that process. So yeah, I feel that when you were talking about like when you're dealing with speaking with people who have gone through difficulty, it's something I always tell them to do is to go into nature and just be in nature. And nature's so patient too, and nature's so indifferent to us but
Yeah.
also so unconditionally loving. It's a so it's there. The connection to nature is fundamental. I think to all of us as humans too, as we go through the chaos we're going through. I think it's so important to connect each day because it really does bring us back to who we are.
Yes. It's as I've said before, I have ADHD, and so it's very hard for me to be in the present moment. I'm so easily distracted and my mind is always has racing thoughts. But when I go out into nature, even from the moment I open the car door and begin to walk in, there's just this calm that descends, and I'm fully present every moment because I'm looking all around me and admiring the scenery. And I never know, even if I walk in the same park every day, which I generally do, I never know which animals I'll see where, or what they'll be doing
Mhm.
that I'll get to watch, kind of a thing. And butterflies have always been an especially powerful symbol of transformation and new life for me. And so every time I see a butterfly, that alone is a reminder and a reconnection to the divine. And I wonder if you could share the powerful story you share in your book about the butterfly that stayed on your hand.
No, um, so I, yeah, so this was actually before I was diagnosed. I was with my spiritual teacher. So I was in India visiting, and I was working on a project. So I was there for an extended amount of time, and at the time, I was, it was sort of, yeah, it was sort of ends, and live for the rest of my life with. And so I was, sort of in that energy of excitement and working on this project, which it was my first large commission that I had. And uh, there was I went to have lunch with my teacher and there were three other people with me, and um and looking this butterfly, and it just sat there. And butterflies never do that. They always come, they may come, but they'll fly away very, very quickly. And this butterfly just sat there, and my teacher started to speak to me about what it is to be a brahmacharya, which is a Sanskrit word for someone who devotes their life to the divine. And and I was like, oh, why is what? And my teacher is like so sharp. Um, there's never a question that doesn't mean something. And I was like, why am I being asked this? Oh, I don't want to hear, I don't want to know about about, someone who devotes they're basically like a nun or a monk. And I was like, and anyway, I ended there was this conversation that happened, and around this theme, and then I went and I my teacher said that a brahmachari is someone who lives close to the divine, and and all I thought was like, no, that's not what I want to do. I do not want to have that sort of life, because I'm about to go to Australia and be with the person that I'm going to spend the rest of my life with. And um, all after, so we spent about 3 or 4 hours, and the butterfly, and we went for a walk around the garden, and we had lunch, and that whole time as the butterfly um, stayed on my hands, and my teacher at one stage said, Natalie, the divine controls everything. And I was like, yeah, okay. And Anna said, even that butterfly on your hand is being controlled by the divine. So I was like, okay, okay. And anyway, I went, and 4 hours later, I went back to my room, and it's about almost a kilometer walk to get back to my room, and that butterfly stayed with me for the whole time. And and then I went to sleep, and then when I woke up, the butterfly had gone.
Mm.
But and what ended up happening is that relationship, I went to Australia a few weeks later, that relationship broke down like within a few days. I was diagnosed with cancer, and then I was living in India like a year later. So and as someone who lives very closely to the divine and is devoted life to the divine. But it was like, yeah. So it was one of those very difficult experiences, but also like, yeah, when you see that the magic of this butterfly, and what was about to unfold in my life, it was quite quite unexpected.
Yes, definitely. I know there's a Jewish saying that we plan, God laughs. And I think that's so true. Of course, we as humans naturally want to control our lives, and kind of before my former career fell apart and I fell apart, I had that illusion of, I do the right things and I get the right outcomes. I work hard, I get the higher education, I live a good life, I'm kind to people, and therefore good things happen, right? And then when bad things happen, well, hey, wait a minute, I have no control over this whatsoever. Even things like COVID happening to the world, and we live under this illusion that we have total control, and there are even some spiritual teachings that reinforce it, like the law of attraction, the whole idea that by our thoughts we can attract what we want or what we don't want because we're having negative thoughts, right? And of course, our mindset is very important and deeply affects what happens. But so
Mm.
do other factors we have no control over whatsoever. I don't think anyone was trying to manifest COVID, right?
Exactly, exactly. And it's so interesting because I was someone like that too. Like I was such a before I had my diagnosis, I was such a perfectionist and everything had to be like this in terms of my work and my plans and I really had the illusion that I was in control, that I was actually, I was making all of this happen. And then you understand like, oh no, we're just puppets in this, in this play. We just yeah, there's such a larger force at play and we're doing our little parts, but we've got no
Yes.
control.
Yeah, I
As
don't
you say,
really see
we
it
can.
so much as we are puppets, but I definitely think we don't have the control. We can choose to refuse to do what the divine calls us to do. And I think
That's
that's
true. Yeah. So
how
maybe
we
puppets
have the
is
evil in the world. But
yeah.
yes, we are being guided and led. And when we tune into our intuition, when we can be quiet and still, and like by
Mm.
being in nature, that's when we're able to hear that still small voice that gets drowned out by the world so often.
Yeah, yeah. I think it's wrong to say that we're puppets. That was not the right analogy. But yeah, in terms of we can choose how we react to a situation, but we can't choose the situation that's coming towards us. Like
Right.
it's like a river. It's like a river will come to us, and yeah, we can, yeah. But we can't stop the river from coming. Basically, we've got to, and then we choose how do we flow with that river of this river of life that's coming through us and to us.
Yes, I heard a wonderful analogy the other day. I've been part of this wonderful seminar all week online summit called "Made for These Times." That's just about how do we as spiritual beings respond to all the tumult in the world right now without getting sucked into responding to hate with more hate and
Mm.
the us versus them mindset. And they're our enemies. We have to defeat and destroy them, whichever side you fall on. It's easy to, think the other side is bad and evil, and therefore we're justified in hating them, and that's actually a good thing to do, right? Um, but anyway, the analogy that was shared was that the divine is like a master painter, and we are sitting for the painting to have our portrait painted, and we can either sit still and completely follow the master's guidance of as the divine painting is being painted, or we can do what most of us want to do and do is um, adjust our position because we think the lighting is better this direction, or offer suggestions to the master of, well, but I think you need to paint me this way, or no, you've not got it quite right, and try to change and interfere with the master's work essentially. And I thought that was a very wise comparison to draw.
That's fantastic. Yeah. Yeah. It's like, yeah. We think we know, but we
Right.
don't. We really, yeah. Yeah. And it's to have really to bring that space of wisdom and you say that quietness and that connection to really understand that it's so much bigger than us. Yeah.
Yeah.
Can I share because I'm just talking about the divisiveness of life can I share the last poem from my book?
Of course.
And it's about the oneness of life. Again, the well, the not- and just because I think that we're living in times where this thing of being right and wrong is so it's so divisive, and that's not who we are. Ultimately, we are nature, and nature is not divisive. We are the trees and any forest. This is where we've come from, and and anyway, this was a process that I went through in terms of writing for the book. It was about going through, um, really coming back into that space of gratitude to life and to actually understanding just how precious this life is, and this being in this state of oneness, and really being in a state of awe of the oneness that we have of this really wonderful life. So this is the drawing of the poem. So the poem is actually scratched into the drawing. And this is how the book is finished. Dear life, so I call it love poem to life. Dear life, you never gave up on me. When it was all too painful and I wanted to give up, you gently held me, waiting ever so patiently, quietly guiding. Remember those circles I have drawn? At first, I drew them as my cells burnt and died, willing them to return to life. Willing them to return to health. Today, the largest circle I draw is me. You have become my sacred center. You are my breath. You are my laughter. You are the unfurling flower. You are the child's smile. You are the beam of afternoon light pouring into my room. You are every tree. You are the cup of tea. You are every drawing. You are the vitality in every being. Beloved life, you are my love, my center. I honor you in all I do on this earth with these hands and this heart. In the meal I cook, in the tree I plant, in the hand I hold, in the drawing I create, in the joy I share. Sacred life, beloved life, I am alive.
So beautiful, and such a fitting way for you to end your book, and sum up the entire journey and the spiritual enlightenment that had begun, before your diagnosis, but it seems like is even more powerful and was strengthened as you recovered.
Yeah, and also just that find and being able to return back to life and to be able to be in that space of complete gratitude. You know, when you were saying earlier when you were sick, it's like it's not possible to be
Yes.
grateful for anything when you're in a deep depression. But to actually come out of that and to actually return to that life force and to that being able to observe and be a part of life is like such an exquisite experience. It's quite extraordinary.
Yes, and I found for myself that the depth of the pain and the sadness and the anger and all of the emotions that I didn't wanna feel but had to as part of my healing journey, not just from depression, but from CPTSD and life, the world right now, right? But along with feeling those intense emotions and being highly sensitive, um, I can feel awe and wonder and delight to a level that
Mm,
most people don't seem to. I'm amazed when I'm walking at the park and I'm just mesmerized by this great blue heron or the sunset clouds or whatever. And other people are walking by oblivious with their headphones on or talking on their cell phone. And so I'm just so grateful that I have this sense of awe and wonder. And earlier this year, we were fortunate enough to have some birds build a nest on our balcony, and we have just a glass door separating our apartment from that balcony. So I could look through it and watch them every day and eagerly await for the baby nestlings to hatch. And they did, and I got to every day, photograph and video and just stand there and watch these adorable baby birds, with their heads and their beaks out of the nest and the mom flying and to feed them and all of that. And it was just glorious. And similar experience when we lived in Hawaii with snorkeling. Um,
mm,
my
yeah,
true sanctuary is the undersea world, hands down. And you mentioned your experience with the butterfly. I didn't have one that dramatic, but there was a spotted eagle ray. And again, normally they will flit right past, and if they see you, they'll even faster swim far away. Um, but this one circled right around me, like close enough that I could have reached out and touched it. Just kept circling in me around and around, and I would twist, circle around with it so I could watch it continuously, and it was just beautiful. And I also sea turtles are now my spirit animal because so often when I snorkeled, there I would see them
mm,
everywhere around me, and they're just so calm and serene and moving slowly through the sea. And I got to be a volunteer and guard the sea turtle nest and watch
mm,
the mom lay the eggs and watch the hatchlings crawl out to the sea. And it's just again that sense of awe and delight and oneness with all of life and wanting to embrace it and preserve it and protect it and just recognize how sacred it is and how fortunate we are to witness it and be part of it.
Mm. And it's also it's so creative too. Nature is like it's extraordinary. Whether you're looking at clouds in the sky and or a sunset, or whether you're looking at ants go up a tree and their journey and how they're connecting to each other, or I mean, or a butterfly. You know, you look at butterflies. It's like it's extraordinary how much beauty a butterfly has or a bird has, and just the fact that a bird can fly. Like there's all of these things in nature, and you just think this is all happening all the time, and and we can tap into it, or we cannot, or we choose not to tap into it. But when you can tap into it, it is like it's not possible to be, you know, that you can't be in awe of it all. It's so yeah,
Yes.
it's a profound experience.
And I think if we could do that with our fellow humans too, like in nature, we'd love seeing all of the different colors side by side. And we love, you know, the different shapes and sizes of all of the different creatures and plants. And the diversity is what makes it beautiful. And yet, for whatever reason, we can't always appreciate that diversity in our fellow humans. And as you said, we've gotten increasingly polarized now. But if we could just see the inner beauty in each other, and that's one thing I've discovered with my work, with my coaching and my support groups, is that when we get to that deeper level where we're willing to be vulnerable and share our struggles and not wear the mask of my life is wonderful and here's my latest vacation photo or accomplishment, but instead, you know, this is my deep hurt and pain. We see that underneath our wildly different experiences, there's those same kind of fears of not being enough, of not being lovable. Um, and that once we connect at that level and are able to help each other see that, yes, you are lovable. Yes, you are beautiful. And it doesn't matter what you do, it's about who you are. It's just so meaningful and powerful, and if only, you know, all of us could do that all the time, we wouldn't be polarized ever. We would see that we're all connected.
Yeah, yeah. It's a really important lesson, isn't it? Just to really be able to see the person in front of you with curiosity. And there's Valerie Kaur's work about See No
See no
Stranger.
stranger. Yes.
I mean, she's really tapped into something so powerful there of seeing the other, and yeah, in a way with such curiosity. It's yeah. And there's also I mean, for me, I find the human soul is so fascinating. That's why I'm so interested in art and creativity. But you look at us, you know, the soul is, you know, we incarnate into these bodies. The soul comes into these bodies, and we have these experiences of life in all different forms and in different countries and that sort of stuff. But we're all going to end up in the same place. You know, we all will have to leave this body one day. And that's something that I keep reminding myself, not in a morbid way, but just like this is a short journey that we get. Like we
Right.
really, you know, I've seen my great grandparents die, my grandparents, my father's passed away. You know, like this story of Natalie, you know, this story of Wendy, it doesn't go on for centuries. It's like very,
Right.
very finite. It's like, let's make the most of it. And really that's when I really have that sense of like, let's, you know, getting on with each other and and when that when it's not possible, what I really try to do is I really try to look with compassion at the suffering of the other person. Like, why is this person behaving in this way? Because where is that suffering coming from? Where is that not feeling I'm not good enough or I haven't been loved enough? You know, because it's always childhood traumas that make us
Yes.
behave badly. And really being able to look at people who are just deeply damaged, and their bad behavior is you know, is basically expressing really traumatic pasts and that haven't been resolved, and they go out into the world and, you know, be violent
Yeah.
or be whatever they can be, or whatever they are. And it's and to really sit back and be able to look at look at them as from and not react, rather than not
Yes.
react to what they're saying, but to actually just be and just really observe where that pain could be coming from. Because, a joyful person doesn't want to hurt anybody. Like if you really feel loved, and if you really do feel enough in the world, you want to have those around you feeling joy and love and flourishing. It's only those who want to like sort of pull down other people that they're hurting.
Yes. And as I mentioned earlier, this online summit that I did that ended today was called Made for Times Like These. And I have to give
Mm,
a shout out to Cameron Trimble, who is on Substack, and her Substack is called Piloting Faith, and her organization is called Convergence. But it's all about bringing people together and leadership formation and helping communities that are in conflict or transition or feel called to lead some but don't know exactly how. And anyway, so the summit had so many marvelous speakers, but that was part of the emphasis. She had us visualize someone that we perceive as an enemy. Um, and for many of us, that's a current very prominent leader, and try to see them, just look into their eyes and see the deeper pain. And
mm,
for what I have done in the past and had others suggest is see them as that little child, as you said, being, being in so much pain that the only outlet they see is to be the abuser instead of the abused for a change.
mm,
And that doesn't mean that we don't hold them accountable for their cruelty or attempt to um, stop it if we have any ability to do so. It doesn't mean we have to stay in relationship with them if they're our abuser. It's just about trying to have that understanding, even if we never have any contact with them again, even if they're already dead, to for our own healing, to see that. And Valerie Carr's work does a great job of that. Not only her See No Stranger book, but her Revolutionary Love project, which revolutionarylove.org is the website. And it's lots of free resources about exactly that. How do we get to that place of listening to each other deeply and recognizing our shared humanity underneath all of the layers of pain and shame and woundedness and anger and outrage at behaviors, and I just think that's the only hope for transforming the world is to first to do our inner healing, transform ourselves so that we can respond instead of react, but then also just attempt to listen and be present. Or if we're not, face to face interacting with the person or don't know them personally, to just be aware that underneath all of that horrid, cruel behavior is a deeply wounded soul who doesn't know how else to live.
mm. You were mentioning the having being connected spiritually. Like, what sort of practice do you have as on a daily level to, because having a spiritual practice in these times is so important because it's something that keeps us centered and keeps us grounded. What do you do?
Absolutely. Yeah. So I start every morning with journaling, just venting whatever I need to vent or writing a letter, asking the divine, or what do you want me to know today? And just sitting and writing what comes from that. I also do tapping, also called
Mhm,
EFT, Emotional Freedom Technique. So I have the Tapping Solutions app. And so I start every morning with tapping, which involves touching the acupressure points and repeating statements. Um, and then, of course, time in nature at every opportunity. And music is incredibly powerful for me spiritually, too. The most powerful spiritual experience for me is being at a Bruce Springsteen concert. But
mm,
since that's rarely possible, I play the videos at home and sing and dance along, and so that is very much a spiritual practice for me and a mental health practice. The two are inseparable for me. Um, and then at night, I do a different kind of journaling. I write lists. So the first list is 5 things that I did that day, whether it's a walk in the park or a load of laundry or I took a nap or I did some writing, whatever. so that I don't feel like my day was wasted, I wasn't productive, all of those old tapes, of not doing enough. Um, so I list those, and then I list 5 things I'm grateful for, and I try to keep them different every day. The only one that's always the same is that I'm grateful for my husband, Steve. We've been married since 1991, and are still happy together. So he's a great blessing for me. But I write 5 things, and they can be, the piece of chocolate cake I enjoyed last night, that I went for a walk and saw a great blue heron. Anything and everything can make that gratitude list. And then the rest of the page is affirmations to help me remember that I am lovable, that I am enough, all of those things. And I don't do the kind of general positive ones like if you believe it, you can achieve it, or anything else that I don't truly believe. I do things like I am honest, or like that anything. I am strong. I am brave. I am helpful. I am kind, things that I actually believe about myself, that are good qualities.
And qualities, yeah, your
And
qualities.
I started that when I was starting to barely come out of my depression, and could hardly even come up with one good thing about myself that I believed, or one thing to be grateful for. But as I've continued it daily for the 3 years now since I've come out of that horrible depression, it has greatly strengthened and become another very important practice to keep me grounded, to remind me that there's still goodness and beauty in the world, and daily experiences I'm grateful for, even if the day as a whole did not go well. How
Yeah.
about you? What are yours?
Yeah, because I think it's so important, and I think it doesn't matter what the practice is, it's just as long as we have a practice that connects us to our soul, because the soul is the in change. Soul doesn't change. Everything else changes. Our environment changes. People, work, but that the soul is unchangeable, and that's something that I really really experienced when I was going through the trauma, the PTSD, and well, through the radiation, and then through the trauma. What I really understood is that everything, like my body fell apart, my mind fell apart. I couldn't remember things. I was in such overwhelm that my brain just, I couldn't remember the names of my friends. I knew who they were, but I couldn't say. I'd be like, I just wouldn't be able to remember their names, simply because my mind was just like, I've had enough. I've just got to shut down for a while until I can recover from this. And but what I saw was that my soul did not get, was unchanged, and it did not get affected by the experience. Like that experience of the soul being something that is eternal. And in India, they talk about the soul as it's like for coming from the drop of the ocean. So if you see the divine as the great ocean, it's a drop of water from the ocean is as salty as the ocean is. So it has that quality of the divine, and it's within us. And um and then and yeah, and then we have this body which we have for just for this lifetime, and then that body goes. But this so for me, what's really important is I'm constantly connecting to my soul. So one way I do it is through breath, and just seeing that, well, not seeing, but being aware that this breath is what is keeping me connected to this life. And anytime I can think about it, and because this life force is the divine too. So it's like this is me being nurtured by the divine within each breath. Um, I have a mantra, which in India is something. So mantras are words or sounds or syllables, and they are different to actually words that talk with, like we as we communicate now with words. But when you chant mantras actually come from nature, and they're sounds that when you repeat them, they create a particular energy, and the more you repeat them, this energy becomes stronger. And it's the word mantra actually means man is soul, and tra is the tool, or otherwise through. So it's a tool for the soul, or it goes through the soul. And the more you chant mantras, there's a real experience of the soul becoming fortified and stronger. So I have a mantra that I chant but I chant this mantra in my mind all day. It's Om Namo Narayani, and it's chanted all day. So I'm always, and Narayani is Mother Earth. So I'm constantly chanting for Mother Earth and thinking of her, and thinking of her as the five elements too. So of course, air, which is the breath. So that's really how I go through the day, and then of course I'm connecting through. I really find my arts practice is another spiritual practice. So, and then I'll actually sit down and do a set of mantras, just and light a lamp, a ghee lamp, and sit down. So that's, but I find that whatever I'm going through emotionally, it's like that idea of the clouds that go across the sky. There's always going to be storms and that sort of stuff with our emotions and what's going on, but there's always the constants of that sky. There's always a blue sky behind the grey clouds or the rainy clouds or the thunderous clouds. So it's that connection is always really important, to keep returning to that. And that really strengthens me daily. It's not even, I wouldn't even say it's daily. I'm like, I feel that my spiritual practice is like in every breath, just by having that awareness.
That's wonderful. Yeah, and it's interesting, in the in the Bible, in the what Christians call the Bible, but the Old Testament, the word is ruach. That the same word means both breath and spirit, and
What
same
happened?
in ruach. It's a Hebrew word.
Okay.
And then in the New Testament, Greek, pneuma is the word for, again, both breath and spirit, as in the Holy Spirit, the divine spirit.
Mm-hmm.
And so,
I didn't know that.
breath is very powerful, and just, again, as you said, a reminder of our connection to the divine. And then when you were talking about, our soul being untouched by whatever happens to us, that reminded me of internal family systems, which is a school of a therapeutic model. There's this core self
Yeah.
that remains untouched by whatever happens, that can heal us. And it's fascinating to me that just recently, Dr. Richard Schwartz, who is the founder of internal family systems, is starting to talk about, there's also, in addition to this kind of core self, there's this spirituality, there's a spiritual presence that he has witnessed. And he had not talked about it until now, because he knew, among doctors and psychologists and everything, that the spiritual is kind of still too woo woo or whatever, would not be respected as a part of a model. But now he's saying, yes, I've experienced it with the patients that are clients that I've worked with, that in addition to this core self that's untouched, there's a spiritual being also that's wider, that is all encompassing, that is the oneness. And so I'm just so fascinated by that, and I'm just so glad that there seems to be now a growing awareness among many of us that, individual healing, that's our starting point, and that helps us see that there's more to the world than just us. We're all interconnected life forms, and we don't just need to heal the planet to save ourselves. We need to heal it to save it, because it is us also, and there's no separation. And it's just so powerful, and yet so hard to remember, even for me. It's one thing to know that at an intellectual level, and even to experience it at times, but to live in that awareness all of the time, and not to react, is just an ongoing daily challenge.
Yeah, but I think it's also important why we have, friends who have the spiritual connection that we can have, that's why they have sanghas, the groups of people who get together and can talk, on the same level too. I think that's
Yes.
really important. But in India, there's this notion of Kali Yuga, which means we are in the darkest times, and where ignorance and greed is at its highest. And they're very, very dark times, but they're also times where where spiritually you can connect very, very fast. And they compare it to being in a very dark room. To be able to, all you need to do is light one candle and you can light up a whole room. And it's like, this is what we're doing by being spiritual beings and being more connected to our souls and our spiritual practices, is that we are lighting these dark times so much more than we could have when times were good, thousands of years ago when they had these other yugas or other times. It was much difficult. You'd have to go and sit on a mountain, and for years and years and years you'd have to meditate, meditate, meditate. But now it's like that connection to the divine happens very, very quickly because there's so much darkness and because that light appears so much more
Yes,
strong.
and in Christianity too, there's a concept of the dark night of the soul, and that
Mm,
many people get stuck there of feeling the darkness and don't. But when you sit in it, as you said, you start to see the light more clearly. And there's a Christian song, "This Little Light of Mine, I'm gonna let it
mm,
shine."
so
And
beautiful.
so, yeah, again, the same idea, and it also brings to mind Amanda Gorman's poem that was read at a previous president's inauguration that includes the lines, "There's always light if only we're brave enough to see it, if only we're brave enough to be it." And that has just stayed with me, and I return to that again and again. That idea that if I can bring some light into the world, however small, and I can connect with other little lights, then that's enough light to overcome the darkness.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And there's also, you can see that it's happening so much. Yeah, the person comes to me is Jean Baptiste, the musician from New Orleans. He's so much talking about light at the moment. It's so his. I mean, he always has been in his music, but now he's just like so bold about it. It's like he is there to love, and he is there to be light. And you can see so many more people are doing this and coming up and being the light, because this
Y-
is who we need to be. And this is
Yes,
who we are. This is who we are. When we've come onto this planet to be light and to be love and to be this, incredible expression of of humanity.
yes, and there's so much temptation to give into the fear and the despair, and that the algorithms feed us stuff designed to stoke outrage and
Mm,
keep us apart and remind us how evil those other people are, whoever the those are. And yeah, when we can see beyond that and connect at the deeper level, it's transforms me, has continues to transform me daily. um and when we're in community, we help each other, shine light when my light is dim or feels like it's gone out, your light shines, and vice versa. And uh,
absolutely.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we've been talking for an hour. I try to keep these to an hour, and every time I'm like, wow, I could talk for 2 more hours. This is wonderful, which is why I do these every week. Um,
Well,
and
thank
for
you so
anyone
much,
out
Wendy.
there watching, if you would like to do one with me, please DM me on Substack, because I love having diverse guests and just talking about um, our real lives and internal journeys to connect with the divine and with each other, and improve our mental health. It's all intertwined. So, thank you so much, Natalie. And if you want to hold
Thank
up your
you.
book again, it's called "I Am Alive," and it's a wonderful book. And I hope everyone else will check it out and enjoy her reflections and her beautiful artwork within it.
Oh yeah, there's a lot of artwork because we didn't read that. There's lots and lots. This is, yeah, many, many drawings.
Yes.
Yeah. And
Well,
thank you
thank
so
you
much.
again.
It's been a real joy to be on my first Substack Live. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.